Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Killjoys. A great season premiere, a lot of interesting things going down, so let's just break down a lot of stuff that went down. So basically, we're picking up literally right where the season 4 finale left off. So it's so weird to see certain things because it's like, obviously, Davin's after his warrant looking for Jack, not realizing that's his son. Johnny and Dutch being a thing. And it's so cute just because obviously they have, it's sad because they have, their marital issues and stuff like that. But obviously there's points where, Dutch kisses him and she's like, oh my God, this feels wrong. And it's like, yeah, it's understandable because it's that's like you making out with your brother. And it's that weird, disgusting thing because, they're friends. Because I think someone had asked me that last season, did I ever think that Dutch and Johnny would ever get together? I was like, no. They're so beyond that. They can make the sexual jokes around each other, have their weird, they have their relationship. They are like brother and sister. It would never be more than that. So that's why it's weird, because Johnny made that clear at the beginning, because it's like, oh yeah, my actual brother is banging the woman I think of as kind of a sister to me. So he made that kind of clear a long time ago. So I just love that they play with that, just ew, this is so weird, this is so disgusting. Which reminds me of Zeph. The guy catches her, she's like, would you like to pay for sex? And she grabs one of her boobs and he's like, ew. He literally audibly said ew, and she got pissed off when he's just like, oh, thank you, and she's walking away. She's like, oh, turn me down, I'll blow your mind, my sex is so explosive. I'm like, I love that she got so upset by that. But there's so many interesting interactions between a lot of people, especially the Garrett and Pre thing. I shit you not, I did not recognize that was Pre. I had to rewind it because I was like, is that Pre? I'm like, no, I must be imagining things. Because you've never seen him with his hair like that and a full-grown beard. It's Pre ain't as fabulous as he normally is. So it's just it's so weird. I mean, because usually Pre's in very bright colors typically. I think so. More often than not. So it's weird to see, because obviously he's always had a shaved head for most of the series, except for the whole Farron situation when he had to go back to kind of get Dutch and Johnny in touch with them. Regardless, you know what I'm saying? And it's just interesting. It's actually kind of funny because actually both premieres, season 4's premiere was exactly like that, where he had just facial hair. Granted, his facial hair changed twice throughout the episode, but still, it's just kind of interesting that both premieres have that. I don't know if that's supposed to be a wink and a nod or what, but it's so crazy to see that. I think it's also kind of supposed to play into the story because obviously him and Garrett, the moment he kind of shits on Garrett's joke, because Garrett's trying to set up a joke and instead of Garrett being able to say it, Pre steals the show by saying the punchline. But it actually turns out that they are in a relationship. Sadly, their relationship in this world is an affair because he's got a fiance. He's like, no, I'll tell her about us. And he's like, oh, you see, there you go, that little dimple. Obviously, his dimples representing the fact that he's lying. And I was like, oh, man, it's kind of sad that you two are, kind of it's kind of a secret, So I thought that was kind of just fascinating, just kind of a little bit of distinguishment between all the characters and stuff like that. Obviously, Jack is Dutch and Johnny's kid, which maybe there's we actually really break that down and think about it. It's kind of interesting because it's oh, here's Dutch being oh, I'm a mom and everything, but it's well, technically, obviously he's Anila's kid, which technically it's a weird way kind of makes Jack your, what was it, nephew, brother, son, I think is what she described him as last season. So there's that, and then Johnny's the uncle, brother to his actual father, Davin. So it's still kind of all in the family to a certain extent. It's just kind of interesting how the whole thing works out. I kind of caught onto it pretty early on about the whole, the moment, Lucy talked to Johnny, I was like, wait, what? But it's yes, that's the thing. This isn't a full-blown alternate reality, which is kind of what I was kind of thinking it was. But it's no, literally everyone on Westerly's memories had gotten messed with. And that was something I think I was kind of under the impression this was a full-blown alternate universe, but it's not. They're literally just under a spell, them specifically. Because that's the thing, when you look at season 4's finale, Turin is there, but it's most likely while shit was going down, everyone was sick and stuff like that, he couldn't get contact with Zeph. He probably came down to check things out for himself, and he probably got caught up in the wave of everybody getting mind wiped, and their memories being swapped around and stuff like that. Because it is just purely a Westerly thing. I guess Westerly, it kind of acts as a great foundation to do what the lady needs done. We'll kind of get to that soon enough. But it's just interesting, Davin's after Jack. It's the whole Crash thing, which he is technically Crash, royalty, to a certain extent. Well, not to a certain extent, definitely is. So obviously there's parallels. Obviously he's trying to track down Jack because he doesn't realize he's tracking down Jack for the lady. So there's that, but it's interesting because even immediately, like, obviously the flirtatious nature between, like, Davin and Dutch is there. Like, especially when she touches his hand at one point, she gets flashes of their life together and everything, like, hot, steamy sex type of situation. I also love, it's like, wait, why aren't you knocked out? He's like, the fact that we put enough stuff in there to knock out a horse. He's like, lucky for me, I'm half horse. And then, like, Dutch laughs. She's like, oh. And Shawnee looks at her like, why are you laughing? She's like, sorry. And he's like, yeah, I get it. Your penis is big. But I got your gun or whatever. And Johnny just tries to shoot. And he's like, did you really just try to shoot me? And then he's like, also, the safety's on. He takes his safety off, tries to shoot, but it wasn't the safety. He basically dropped the charger of the gun. And Davin's looking like, all right, are we going to just stop this and just sit down and talk? You're looking like an idiot. I love it. It's also interesting, too, that Dutch is the one who runs the bar. There was some interesting conversation between her and Johnny where she was basically saying stuff like, oh, how she'd want, like, what she'd want. Like, if kind of they led a different life, what she would want. I was like, are we going to be, like, on the nose and be, like, kind of the Killjoy thing? But it's like, no. She talked about something which I'm like, is that supposed to be kind of foreshadowing something potentially at the end of the series? If it wasn't for the whole assassin thing becoming a Killjoy, is that, like, the whole, like, Leaf plan that she had out, stuff that she had planned out on Leaf, it's like, would that be the life she'd be leading right now? I thought that was so fascinating. But I also love the whole thing of Johnny trying to compare. It's like, oh no, like, yeah, we have our rough patches and everything, but it's like, oh, we're like this sausage, and basically you eat it a couple of times. I mean, it's good, but then obviously you eat it over and over again. There's issues there, and I love him getting so upset with himself. He's like, oh man, sausage, making him making the appearance, and he eats it. He's like, actually, that's some good sausage. I talked about it, but it's interesting that, like I said, they're having their little torrid affair, but there's still that emotion between Garrett and Pri, because Garrett's like, I didn't ask you to protect me, and Pri's like, I know you're, he's like, I'm not just using you, and Pri's like, no, I know you're not. And it's like I said, even though they're in this complicated thing, it's there, that heart is there, that can't be completely erased. And obviously we see that with other people too. Zeph has kind of noticed certain things, like it is raining like twice a day, but no one's picking up on it. And, Dutch ended up remembering because someone, I'm assuming it's Anila. I kind of had a feeling because at the end of season 4, and that's a detail I think I let slip my mind, at the very end, while the green is collapsing, Klein shows up there, and who's there with him? He's right behind Anila, which, I'll get to all that soon enough. But I think it's Anila that's helping her out, because who else would know the significance of those boxes, like that box with the weapon and everything, that being a Klein and Dutch thing? Like, who else would know that? That's awake at this point in time. So it has to be Anila, to the point that someone locked her door, because the whole thing of like the contamination showers and stuff like that. I thought that was so fascinating. I even love Dutch going to Zeph, right? Because Zeph kind of figured, like, okay, she thinks that this is kind of like some, like, brainwashing thing going on. Zeph is super smart, so of course she'd be the one to kind of figure things out. And I love at one point, I love her being like, wow, you are beautiful. Like, do you even have pores? And then later on, it's like, oh, like, Zeph, Dutch hugs her and everything. And she's like, were we lovers in that different life? And Dutch is like, oh, God, no. She's like, really? Because Zeph is like, this feels right. I love that. And also, like, bye, my only friend. Please come back because I don't have any other friends and you're hot. So I just love that. But I did like that because, it's kind of interesting, too, because I actually kind of forgot. The fact is that Dutch and Zeph weren't necessarily on their best of pages, like, because, well, the last interaction between them was before Anila and Dutch had switched places. So the real last interaction of the season was between Anila and Zeph. So that's a complicated, interesting situation. But it does seem like even though you have your memories back, you don't completely forget the new life you had, because she's having to pretend and kind of go, well, I don't know whether the new memories are completely gone or not. No, because she knows enough to be like, oh, I work at a bar and stuff like that. So they're still there. Just obviously your real memories are there at the forefront and everything. So They go off with Davin. I love it. Davin's like a stickler. He knows the rules and stuff like that. He's calling Johnny and Dutch amateurs with the whole situation. I'm like, okay, I get the irony behind it, considering he was the amateur at one point in time, because they were the professionals when it came to all this. Which, saying the word professional is kind of taking it loosely with our hero, Team Awesome. Awesome Force. What I also thought was kind of neat too was that, you know, Lucy was the one that reached out to Johnny. I was like, what is it? Because that's why I was in my head. I was still thinking like, oh, an alternate reality, but it's like, oh no. Like I said, it's just memories and stuff. Like, so obviously Lucy would be able to reach him at any time. She just had to wait for him to be alone. I was like, yeah, she's a machine, so it'd be hard to mess with her. But apparently they did try to mess with her to make it so she could. But Johnny has like backup systems for Lucy, so she was able to access her memory. So no matter what they tampered with, she was always have backups to remember everything. So I thought that was pretty neat. Delsea is always, well, to be fair, I was about to say, because I was like, Delsea was already pretty much of a badass, but it's like, let's not forget, that was when she was like being able to fight and stuff like that. That was back when she was hulling and had the reflexes and stuff like that, being a badass, even pregnant. But let's not forget, she's 100% human now. So all that throwing in knives and firing a bullet and taking people down like that, it's like, obviously that's 100% her. I'm curious to see how much Jack has grown too, because we actually do get a time frame, because I'm curious, like, how long have they been under the spell? It's been over a month. It's been 43 days apparently, which is crazy. But basically that entire time, Delsea and Jack have been planning stuff out, which begged the question, because let's not forget, one of the 9 visited Turin, because he was like, oh, let's blow up Westerly, that dude. So it's like, what about him? What about the rest of the 9? I guess they're in hiding, but to be fair, the lady's kind of expanded, so she might be kind of running things all over the place. Like, her armada is here, probably stretching all across, you know, the quad, you know, so maybe even the entire J, that she kind of has all that under control. Maybe they're just straight up hiding. We'll see about all of that. But obviously, Delsea is still pissed, because it's like, oh, you promised that you were going to get Anila out. To be fair, it was a complicated thing. She thought she was taking Anila out, when in actuality, she took out the lady. So that's a whole thing. So, but it's kind of interesting, because Delsea kisses her, but I think it's the whole thing of like, I hate that you look like her. Obviously later on it was like, oh, it was for her DNA, but I thought it was like, oh, it's because that's the closest you've been to Anila since season 3's finale. Well, before season 3's finale. Season 3's the last time you were together with her, so, and you weren't there when she kind of returned for her short visit at the end of season 4, so it's like, understandable. I thought that's what it was, but it was all a ploy too. But can't tell you what's going on, because you knowing anything, the lady's inside your head already, so that could be a problem. So I thought that was kind of fascinating how that was done. But like I said, you know, Dutch is playing alone like she doesn't know anything. What they have planned exactly, I have no idea how they plan. I mean, but it did make it clear that Jack wasn't one that was kind of potentially like, you know, like I said, because I'm curious to see how much he's grown, because obviously he advances faster than most people anyway. I mean, technically he's still not even a year old at this point in time, yet technically he's 13, but nevertheless, it's quite interesting. Because once again, we still haven't even seen the full scale of what he's capable of. I'm sure it's a cross between what Anila can do meets what Davin could do, but probably more so on the Anila side of things, but it probably has more like outward applications to like Davin's abilities, but nevertheless. So, but like I said, it just seems like he's more, he doesn't seem like he's the same kid we met in season 4 is all I'm saying. So he's grown in that short amount of time to the point, like, I think, well, Delsea has probably been drilling him and getting him ready for this whole situation, you know, when the time came. So Dutch tries her best to kind of awake everyone from their memories, because it turns out the things that they're wearing, it's not just like warning about contamination or rush to contamination. It's more so about stress, because stress and certain triggers will awaken your memories. You'll get the stress alert, so that means like, oh, everyone thinks it's about contamination, so they'll run to the nearest decontamination, and their memories kind of get, you kind of forget that you were remembering, and the false memories kind of set in. So, but what was interesting is how they ended up tying it together. Like the moment, like Zeph was mentioning fail safes and stuff like that, and they read out into the rain, I'm like, that's why it rains like twice a day and no one really pays attention to it. It was right there in front of you the entire time. I was like, of course, it's in the rain too. That's so fascinating, because that way, just in case there's anyone that might scurry the way through and might not make it to decontamination, the rain would get them like it got all 3 of them. For a second, I was thinking maybe Johnny wasn't. I think Johnny might have remembered enough for him not to be. Well, because it seems like you can revert, because Dutch was worried about it. That's why she gave it to Zeph to be like, oh, I need you to be my failsafe. So it is possible to revert, but maybe like because it is Dutch, maybe the lady doesn't even want to bother doing it anymore. It's like, just kill her. I'm planning out what I need to do, so who cares anymore? But like the way Johnny was like, no, stop, wait. I was wondering if maybe he still had some memories of her as his wife and stuff like that. It's like, oh, she's a wanted criminal, but that's still my wife. So maybe that's what it is. But obviously Pri and Davin turn against her, as well as everyone in town. So I'm curious how that happened. Like I said, I had a feeling like Johnny, especially because later on it's like, oh, she has no one. I thought Johnny was going to pop up or something. Or even Anila, but that might be kind of something they kind of wait to kind of pop up at the right time. But like I said, as we see at the end, Klein is there, meaning it has to be Anila. It's like, how did she break free of, like, you know, the brainwashing and everything? It's like, that's why I told you, don't underestimate my daughters. He's like, I made that same mistake doing it myself, time and time again. Sadly, we do have Zeph getting injured at the end there, but and even she isn't fully awakened, but Zeph is smart as the way she is, so even with the blocked off memories, she still has enough to remember to kind of like still be herself without fully being herself. This might actually be enough to trigger her into fully remember, because it might trigger, like, there's probably, because like everyone had different triggers. Like Pri had like, oh, this is who you really are, you sing, you own this bar. For Johnny, it was him being engaged to Potter, and for Davin, it's, you know, his that day he was controlled and he ended up killing all of the people in his unit. Like those specific triggers, I'm sure Pip is going to end up being Zeph's trigger, and that might, like I said, her and Dutch haven't really buried the hatchet yet, so that might be a complicated thing. Probably a thing of Zeph remembering everything that Dutch did with her, being her friend and everything, while her memories were blocked, but then probably also remembering everything from before as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where everything goes. I'm very excited to see how the final season plays out. It's kind of crazy to just see it's here, you know. I knew it was coming ahead of time, obviously, but it's still weird to finally be here and just be like, this is it, the final season. I'm excited to see where this crazy wild ride takes us. Starting off with what the next episode has in store for us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.